The timing of you finding this today is not accidental. I want to say that before anything else, because the timing matters in the specific and particular form of something that was always going to find you at this specific moment, in the specific flow of your specific day, rather than at some earlier or later point when the message would have arrived without the context of what is happening right now in the field around your life. That makes the timing of this finding the specific and significant thing it is. Something is about to be revealed to you about a situation you are in, or a person connected to you in that situation, in the specific and significant form of something that has been held in the interior and private dimension of someone who is about to stop holding it and to let it be revealed in the visible and direct and arriving form of the big revelation that this reading found you just before rather than just after, because the just before matters for how you receive what is coming in the prepared and grounded form, rather than the unprepared and destabilized form that the just after would have produced without this reading arriving first in the non-accidental timing of today. I am sorry you have to hear some of what I am about to say, and I am going to say all of it anyway, because all of it matters for how you receive what is coming in the next hours or days that separate the now of this reading from the then of the revelation that is already in motion toward you. Welcome, my beautiful soul, and stay with every single word. Before the revelation and what it contains and how to receive it in the steadied and prepared form that this reading is delivering, I need to sit with something I feel in your energy that is sitting underneath the situation. This reading is about, in the deep and quiet and rarely acknowledged form of something that has been present without being directly named by the person carrying it, which is you. I feel a specific and quiet form of shame, and I want to name it carefully because shame is a large and often misused word, and what I am feeling in your energy is a particular and specific form of it that deserves the precise naming rather than the general one that would miss the specific thing that is actually present. Huh. It is the specific shame of having hoped for something without the external confirmation that the hoping was justified in the form that the hoping needed from outside itself to feel safe to be fully inhabited, rather than quietly carried in the interior and unconfirmed form of hoping for something that has not yet been confirmed as real by the evidence that would make the hoping feel justified to the person doing the hoping, rather than quietly suspect in the unconfirmed form that the hoping has been taking in the interior of the person who has been hoping without the confirmation that would make the hoping feel less like something to be slightly ashamed of and more like something that is safe to inhabit openly without the quiet internal monitoring of whether the hoping is justified by the evidence that is not yet fully present. You have been hoping, and the hoping has felt slightly shameful in the specific and unconfirmed form of someone who is not certain that what they are hoping for is going to arrive in the form they are hoping for it, and who is therefore slightly ashamed of the hoping itself as evidence of a wanting that might not be proportionate to the reality of what the situation actually contains for the person doing the hoping, without the confirmation that would tell them that the hoping is proportionate rather than slightly beyond what the confirmed reality would justify. Spirit wants me to say something directly to this shame before anything else, because it deserves the direct address rather than the gentle skipping past into the good news that is coming, without the honest acknowledgement of what has been sitting underneath the situation. In the quiet and unaddressed form that this reading is now addressing, in the direct and honest form that it deserves, the shame is misplaced, completely and specifically and without qualification. Misplaced. Hoping for something real is not evidence of delusion. It is evidence of perception. And there is a difference between the hoping that arrives from nowhere in the wishful and ungrounded form of someone who is projecting a desire onto a situation that does not contain what the desire is projecting onto it, and the hoping that arrives from something real that the person doing the hoping has perceived in the situation in the accurate and intuitive form of someone whose perception was registering something actually there before the confirmation of the something arrived in the visible and external form that would make the perception confirmable to the person who was doing the accurate perceiving before the confirmation made the accuracy visible. Your hoping was the second kind, not the first, in the specific and important distinction between projection and perception that determines whether the shame is proportionate to the hoping or misplaced in the hoping that was perception all along, rather than the projection that the shame was treating it as in the quiet and interior and unaddressed form of shame that had not yet been told that it was wrong about what the hoping was before this reading told it in the specific and direct form that it deserved to be told. The revelation that is coming is the confirmation of the perception that has been carrying the quiet shame of not yet being confirmed, and that is about to be confirmed in the specific and arriving form of someone revealing something big that tells you that what you perceived was real and that the hoping was proportionate all along to the something real that the perception was perceiving before the confirmation arrived in the revelation that is now very close. Now the revelation itself and who is doing the revealing and why now rather than earlier when the revealing would have arrived in a different form for a person in a different position than the one this reading is finding you in. Today, the person who is about to reveal something big has been holding what they are about to reveal for a significant period in the interior and carefully managed form of someone who understood that the revealing would change things and who was not yet certain in the period of the holding that they were ready for the things that the revealing would change to be changed in the specific and irreversible way. That certain revelations change things. Once they have been made, they tried timing first in the waiting for the right moment form of someone who believed that the right moment would arrive and that the arrival of the right moment would make the revealing feel less risky than it felt in the moments that were not yet the right moment, in the specific and indefinitely deferred form of a right moment that kept not arriving, as long as the waiting was the primary activity of the person doing the holding. They tried silence next, in the if I don't say it, it won't be real form of someone who understood that the unsaid thing remains in the controllable interior dimension as long as it stays unsaid, and that the saying of it moves it from the controllable interior into the uncontrollable exterior, where it produces effects that the interior could manage as long as the thing stayed there, rather than being revealed into the exterior space, where the effects become the reality, rather than the possibility that the interior could still contain, as long as the silence held and they tried redirection in the maybe it will resolve without the revealing form of someone who hoped that the situation would find its way to the destination they were holding the revealing for, without the revealing being necessary as the vehicle for arriving there through some other route that did not require the specific and risky act of revealing the thing they were holding in the interior and carefully managed form that the holding had been taking for the full period of the waiting and silence and redirection that preceded the now arriving decision to reveal. None of them resolved it. And the decision to reveal has now been made in the arrived at and no longer deferrable form of someone who has run out of the alternatives to the revealing that were available before the decision was finally arrived at. The something big that is about to be revealed is about you, specifically and significantly, in the form of something this person has known about their own feelings or experience or understanding in relation to you, and has been holding in the interior without revealing it to you for the full period of the waiting and silence and redirection that preceded the now arriving decision. What they are about to reveal is not bad news wearing a dramatic costume. I want to say that clearly. And immediately, because the I'm sorry of the title and the something big of the title can produce in the person reading the specific anticipatory dread of someone who is bracing for difficult information delivered in the dramatic and arriving form of a big revelation. Uh, the I'm sorry is for the weight of it, not the content of it. The content is significant, but it is not the kind of significant that requires the bracing of someone preparing to receive difficult news. In the painful form, that difficult news takes, when it arrives in the full and landing form of something that changes things, in the difficult and unwanted direction. The I'm sorry is for the weight of receiving something significant that you did not know was coming. In the specific form it is taking, when it arrives, and that will require something of you. In the receiving, in the form that significant and unexpected things always require of the person receiving them. When they arrive without preparation, except for the preparation this reading is providing, in the non-accidental timing of today, that found you before the revelation rather than after. Spirit is showing me the timing precisely, and I want to name it in the specific and concrete form that is more useful than the approximate and vague form. That would make it less orienting. For the person who needs the orienting that the specific form provides, within the next week, the revealing arrives in whatever specific and personal form your life delivers it in. For the specific person this reading found, in the non-accidental timing of today, a week, not months, not a vague future that could be any distance away, a week, in the specific and arriving window that Spirit is pointing toward as the container for the revelation that has been held and is now releasing into the visible space between you. And the person who has been holding what they are about to reveal, now I want to speak to a voice that I feel clearly in your energy and that I want to address directly before it undermines the receiving of what is about to arrive. In the week-long window, that Spirit is naming. The voice says, I have been expecting revelations before, in the form of someone finally saying, the thing that would confirm that the hoping was perception and not projection, and the revelation has not always arrived. In the form or the timing that I was led to expect it in, and the not arriving has added weight to the quiet shame of the hoping that this reading has just named as misplaced, but that my history with the not arriving of expected revelations makes difficult to fully release in the specific and honest form of someone who has learned to be cautious about revelations that are promised before they arrive. I hear that voice, and I honor it in the earned and appropriate form of wariness that has a history, and that is not irrational, but rather the intelligent adaptation of someone who has been through the expecting and the not arriving enough times to develop the specific caution that the history justifies. And I want to say one thing to that voice that I hope it can receive in the honest and specific form that this reading is delivering rather than the dismissive form that would tell the voice simply to trust without the specific reasoning that would make the trusting something other than the naive form of someone who has not learned what the history taught. The difference between the revelations that did not arrive and the one that is arriving now is that the previous ones were being held by people who still had alternatives to the revealing available in their interior at the time they were being held, and who therefore continued holding because the alternatives were still more comfortable than the revealing. This one is being held by someone who has exhausted the alternatives in the specific and now completed form of someone who tried timing and tried silence and tried redirection and found all three insufficient to replace what the revealing is the only remaining form of, in the situation that has run out of the alternatives that were holding the revelation back. Before they ran out, that is different. In the specific and important way that alternatives exhausted is always different from alternatives still available. For the person who is holding something and deciding when and whether to reveal it, in the specific situation that this reading is about, I want to give you something. Before this closes, in the permission form that the quietly ashamed of the hoping person reading this specifically needs, before the week passes and the revelation arrives, in the confirming form of what the perception was perceiving, all along, permission to release the shame of the hoping. Now, before the confirmation arrives, not after, in the retroactive form of someone who releases the shame. Once the confirmation has proven that the hoping was justified and the shame was misplaced, but who waited for the proof before releasing the shame that this reading is asking you to release now. Before the proof arrives, in the week-long window that is already counting, release it now. Because the proof is not what makes the releasing safe. The reading is what makes the releasing safe. In the non-accidental timing of today, that found you before the revelation, so that you could release the shame before the confirmation arrived, rather than only after, when the confirmation would have done the releasing for you. But when the releasing would have been retroactive, rather than chosen in the specific and pre-confirmation form that this reading is asking for from the person it found today. In the non-accidental timing that was always going to find them before the week-long window and the revelation it contains arrived, you are protected, and the perception was real, and the hoping was proportionate, and the shame was always misplaced, and the revelation is on its way to the specific person who was always going to receive it in the week-long and now counting form of what was always going to be revealed when the alternatives ran out and the holding could no longer hold what the revealing is about to release into the visible space between you and the person who has been holding it for the full period of the waiting and silence and redirection that this reading just named and that are now all done. Take gentle care of yourself. My beautiful soul, the week is already counting.